This episode of the What If Podcast is brought to you in part by Button Poetry, where poetry isn't dead. Find real stories you'll want to listen to and art you'll actually care about by visiting them today at buttonpoetry.com.
Welcome to the What If Podcast with your hosts, Spencer Worth-Davis and Ryan Copperrood.
It's the What If Podcast.
Weird, Gorder's back.
Weird.
Hey,
Gorder.
2 weeks in a row, my guy.
I've been sleeping on the couch for the last 7 days. It's been tight. Spencer's wife hates me. It's tubular, dude.
Hey, but that couch is pretty sweet though, right?
Oh my God. It's ridiculous.
It's a radical couch.
Anyone who has loved Spencer or Spencer loves has probably spent a night on that couch at some point.
I love a lot of people on that couch, bro. It's my thing.
Well put.
We are back. It is the What If Podcast. Gorder is here with us again. We are in part 3 now of a series
Shit going missing.
of shit going missing. What have you disappeared? Part 3 today. If you haven't listened to the previous parts 1 and 2, we won't get super into the things we talked about in 1 and 2, but they will help, I think.
This is a Bigfoot-free episode.
Yes, true.
All right.
So, yeah, if that means you got to bail, just cut and run on this episode now, I understand.
I'm
If
hit
you're
that couch
only here,
again, baby.
if you're only here for the Bigfoot, I feel you. That's me too. I'm going to try and power through this lame-ass episode, though.
Where's the space ape? Shit sucks.
Space ape, that should be one.
No skinwalkers. I ain't listening.
Yeah.
All right.
We have a...
Death Valley Germans. Now, whatever. We're getting into the story, bro.
Let's do it.
The story.
Spencer's ready. I'm with the story too. I got all kinds of questions, but let's kick it off. The Death Valley Germans is the subject of today's What If You Disappeared.
I don't remember where or when I first came across this one. It was probably on Reddit. There's a high likelihood.
Oh, Reddit.
But we're going to be pulling, I think, entirely from an article written by Tom Mahood, sourced from otherhand.org.
Which is Tom's actual personal website.
Yes.
And the reason that we will be pulling, I think, primarily from that is because this is all firsthand account and firsthand documentation of this story and this experience.
The vast majority of it,
The vast majority.
I have not heard this story, and I'm extremely excited.
Yeah, I think you're going to like this one.
I'm that guy, the movie you don't want to sit behind. Oh, shit!
One thing to say really quickly, whatever you're doing right now, obviously don't run away to otherhand.org, but if you do go to otherhand.org, we'll post some of this stuff on the website, on whatifpodcast.com, as it relates to this episode. But there's a lot of really great pictures and maps and things that, like, if you were to just read Tom's story, you might be like, well, where's the proof? But there's like a lot of proof of Tom doing and taking photos of the things that we're about to talk about in this episode.
He did a pretty incredible job of documenting every step of this whole story.
Yeah, I would say Tom is a... he in his writings, he actually takes offense at one point to being referred to as an enthusiast, but I don't entirely know what else to call. I mean, he's a researcher, but he's a
he participated in search and rescue missions. He did. I forget what the name of the organization is, but he was active in search and rescue missions.
Sure. I guess maybe what I'm trying to illuminate here is that Tom's account of this entire story that is on otherhand.org is just sort of his personal account for the sake of telling his own story.
Yes.
Which we can elaborate on and will, I guess, elaborate on as we go here.
October 21st, 96, in Death Valley National Park, California, United States.
Yeah.
A park ranger is flying in a helicopter over the southern part of the park as part of a routine effort to locate drug manufacturing facilities.
So Death Valley National Park, for those who don't know, outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, northwest of Las Vegas proper, a sizable national park in that region.
Yeah. We're in California, though, correct?
And it's 1996. You said helicopters. Yeah.
Isn't it on the border of Vegas? Or it's just outside of Vegas, but it's on the border of Nevada and California?
Google me, baby.
Google me,
Maps
baby.
that shit, motherfucker.
Google me, baby.
Okay, you're correct. So the eastern border of Death Valley National Park is the border of California and Vegas, but it is entirely in California.
Yeah, the park itself is, but the closest big city we can give you is,
it's like
Vegas.
It's like due west of Vegas.
Yep.
Okay. 1996, yes, Gorder, not 18 or 17.
With those, old helicopters, right?
Right, yeah. The flying machines.
Those 1800s helicopters,
They're looking for, I guess it's so remote out there that it is a likely place for people to hide and make and distribute drugs.
Sure.
Secretively.
Of all sorts.
So they would routinely fly helicopters over the area and try and spot this activity.
Sure.
They did not spot any drug manufacturing or distribution, but they did see a vehicle in Anvil Canyon, which is about 2.5 miles into the canyon from where it likely would have entered.
Not just any vehicle, though, a minivan.
Well, yeah, this
Not
was
abnormal for 1996.
this was weird
No doubt.
for a couple of reasons. The first being that there's not a road there.
Right.
And motorized vehicles are actually prohibited in the area.
Yes.
So whoever drove there ignored these rules and drove...
ignored the concept of roads.
and drove several miles off-road in... Not a Jeep or an SUV or some sort of... it was a Plymouth Voyager, okay?
I'm so sorry. Not an Astro van?
It was a green Plymouth Voyager. So they see this van from the air. They land nearby and go over to inspect it. And the vehicle was stuck in the sand. So they were in this wash of this valley, fairly soft sand. There's no road. And the tires had sunk into the sand far enough that it was just totally stuck. And the van also had 3 out of 4 tires flat.
I think the thing I saw said it had likely been, like based on the tracks, had been driving for hundreds of feet, if not more, with flat tires. So
yeah, I guess I could tell. If you had a flat tire, I suppose the imprint that your tire would leave would be rims, wider, or it would be the
rims cutting in or something like that.
So they drove this van 2.5 miles into this valley, into this wash with no road, got 3 flat tires, and then got stuck. And the van had apparently been there for a while because it was totally covered in dust. The vehicle was locked, and there was no one in the area. They also didn't see any tracks in the immediate vicinity of the van.
Yep.
They note this. The park rangers get in contact with LAPD, and they find out that the van was actually reported stolen on September 10th, so about 6 weeks prior.
Yep.
And that it was a rental that was due back on July 26th, but had never been returned.
It indeed was.
Thank you for that.
I was gonna add something, but I'm gonna wait to add the thing I was going to add.
I thought you were talking about like a quip about how they're not going to get their deposit back.
Well, that's a real part of that concept.
So the police were able to then get the names of the people who had rented the van from the rental company and found out that there was an Interpol alert for these 4 people that was registered on August 14th. And the 4 people were Egbert Rimkus.
Heyo. Yeah.
Sorry, fam. Egbert Rimkus?
Rimkus.
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 Did J.K. Rowling write this?
That's real.
His son, George or Georg? George without an E. How do we say that?
I'm going to say George.
I like Georg.
Georg. I'm going to say George.
Sounds like a vampire sidekick.
All right, George Weber. He was in the grilling business.
Yep.
He was 11-year-old son of Egbert Rimkus, George Weber. Egbert's girlfriend, Cornelia Meyer, who was 28 years old, and her son, Max Meyer, who was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 adults, 34 and 28, and 2 kids, 11 and 4.
Yep.
The reason it was Interpol was because these 4 people were German and were on vacation from Frankfurt. The group had left Frankfurt and arrived in Seattle on July 8th, and then immediately caught another flight to LA where they picked up the rental van. The van was in Cornelia's name because Egbert didn't have a license, I guess. It was due back, like we said, on July 26th, and they had flights out of LA to Germany on July 27th. They did not board that flight, and there's no evidence that they ever left the country or arrived back in Germany.
Yep.
For the first week that they were in the U.S., they stayed in the San Clemente area of Southern California, doing some just tourist stuff. And then on the 12th, Egbert made a call to his bank requesting that $1,500 be wired to a Bank of America branch in San Clemente.
Let me get my monies.
Yeah, and they had also contacted a family member asking that they send money as well. So they were there for the 8th through the 27th. So
3 weeks.
Yeah, just under 3 weeks, and they needed additional funds twice.
And 1,596.
It's a decent chunk of money
now for me right now.
Right.
Yeah,
And that was one of 2 requests. I think the other was about the same. So they asked for $3,000 additional dollars for a 3-week vacation.
And is San Clemente in this area? Is that part of is it very close to Death Valley, within Death Valley?
It is not within it. I think it's further south.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Ryan on LA geography.
Yeah, LA geography. San Clemente is not that close. It's like a couple hours away.
Okay.
Okay. And do you know in what direction?
Southwest is
Part of the
gonna be
LA hub of cities, I imagine.
It's I think it's south and east of Los Angeles, and it's like maybe due west or south and west.
There's
of
somebody
Vegas.
listening to this right now from San Clemente.
Yeah,
They're
who's just
like,
beating
you
me
fucking
up.
idiots.
Yeah.
Am I roughly correct?
You're close.
All right.
It's down the coast south of LA.
Yeah.
About, let's see how far that is. It's not far. It's about 60 miles south of
Okay,
LA.
an hour.
Yeah. Hour and 15 south of LA.
All right.
So they stay in the San Clemente area for about a week and then ask for money twice. They then traveled the California coast a bit, and they're getting this information, by the way, based on a camera that was later recovered from the van. So they have a roll of film or several rolls of film that they took on their vacation
Yeah.
that I guess were dated.
Yeah, dated and recovered in the van.
Okay.
When the van itself was found in Death Valley National Park.
I'm spooked as heck.
They traveled the coast on July 21st. They asked for money again from, it was Egbert's, his ex-wife of all people. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you think
Wow.
she called him Eggy?
I bet she didn't give him any money.
She called him Sunny Side Up.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. He hit up his ex-wife for money?
Yes.
Now, see, I have an ex-wife.
You ever asked her for money?
Fuck no. Dude, I've been late on rent. I've almost been in foreclosure. I never even crossed my mind.
And I bet it's super.
See, this is what you're here for, Gorder. This is great insight.
And I bet it super wouldn't have crossed your mind if you were on an international vacation with your new girlfriend.
So I'm with this super hot girl. You know, it's me, Eggy, baby. Hey, come on, Eggy.
It's Eggy, baby.
I can't get over Egbert. I'm sorry. Keep going.
You don't need to get over it. It's good.
Shockingly, those funds were never sent. They checked out of their hotel on July 22nd and proceeded via Voyager to the Plymouth Voyager, not the spaceship, to Death Valley. That's as much as they know about their trip. I think it's entirely based on photographs that they were able to recover.
Shady as fuck.
It is pretty weird. The day after they find the minivan in the wash, the National Park Service and the Inyo, is that how you say that?
Inyo. Yep.
Inyo County Sheriff's Office started a search for the 4 missing people.
INYO.
Yes.
Inyo County.
Inyo County.
I'm all up in Inyo County.
There were no footprints near the van, but they found a few food wrappers and a couple of shitholes. They had dug holes in which to shit.
Good idea when you're camping.
You gotta shit somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to happen somewhere.
Obo. Inside the van, they found, I'm going to list all the things that were inside this
I'm trying to keep
green Plymouth Voyager. Yeah.
Yep.
Gorder, you're our objective listener. If we say anything that doesn't make any sense, stop us.
Okay. All
All right, you boygans.
Inside the van, they found that wasn't that funny. They found two.
really find it funny.
He loved it.
That dude
He
says
loved
some
it.
weird
Don't
ass
judge
shit,
him.
man.
Don't
That's
judge
real.
him.
Hey,
He
shout
loved
out
it.
to basketball, Spencer. Like, that's not weird.
You laughed, bro. That shit worked.
Embarrass myself.
They found 2 unopened bottles of Bud Ice and 1 empty bottle.
Remember when beers were putting out ice because it was like
dude.
supposed to be super cold?
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I'm
But
sorry.
you're right.
you're right.
It's
important.
It's
Y'all
important to the
remember
time period.
Pogs?
I used to drink Bud Ice and play Pogs back when I was 10. They found 1 empty and 1 3/4 full bottle of bourbon, so they were trying to have a fucking party.
Ew.
They found some large water and juice bottles. They found their luggage and their clothes. They found several rolls of film and a camera, a sleeping bag, an empty sleeping bag box, a tent, a pipe, a tobacco pipe, a leather card carrier containing bank cards and a credit card, a card from the Seahorse Resort in San Clemente, and
Ew.
some kids' toys, and a spare tire.
All right. So we got one sleeping bag?
1 sleeping bag and 1 empty sleeping bag box. So it's not clear if
So
that is
possibly 2 sleeping bags.
Yeah,
well,
maybe.
We'll kind of get to that later.
Okay.
Heard.
There was also an American flag that had a label on it from. Excuse me. They also had an American flag that was had a label on it from the Butte Valley Stone Cabin, which was a cabin located about 4 miles west of where they found the van. And it's a shelter that's stocked with food and water and stuff, I think to use sort of as like a base camp for people who are going out camping and hiking into Death Valley.
From Butte.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they determined from that they had at some point been at this cabin about 4 miles west of where they found the van. That's what they determined on the first day. The second day, they towed the van out of the canyon and they started a search for these 4 people.
I think now is a really good time to talk a little bit about Death Valley as a concept.
It's fucked up over there.
I mean,
Well,
it's called Death Valley.
Yeah.
It's called If you didn't
True.
if you didn't know, Death Valley is I would say an unforgiving place, hence the name.
Yeah.
And they actually did once this search started, they did some retroactive sort of weather analysis of.
Turns out it was hot as fuck.
Yeah, of
In Death Valley, you say?
Yeah, no shit, right? But
It was worse than I would have guessed.
it was also worse than I would have guessed as well. And I think it is important to the entire underlying layer of this whole story to understand what this area was like at this time. So
Lay it on me,
July,
Kimasabi. How hot?
yeah, so July in Death Valley, late July in Death Valley,
Jesus.
highs of 123 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and lows, and by lows, I mean
overnight in a desert low.
at night when it's fucking dark out in the
Deserts
desert.
get cold.
No, it turns out
This one does not, apparently.
Turns out in July in Death Valley, the coldest it gets at night is 91 degrees Fahrenheit.
Jesus.
The low on the day that they went missing was 96.
Yeah, 96
A little
degrees.
aside for you, I biked here today. It was about a mile, and it's about 80 degrees
Yeah,
today.
83,
And
yep.
It took me an hour to stop sweating.
We're
maybe?
halfway through our second episode and you just stopped sweating.
Sorry, keep going.
But I do think it is valuable to understand that the underlying texture of this entire story is that
It was hot as balls.
It was like not just hot as balls. It was like maybe the hottest temperature you could possibly.
Well, that's why they had
approach.
the Bud Ice, Ryan.
I
They
mean,
Yeah,
gotta
they should have
keep
been
cool.
that's gonna take you only so far in the world of regulating your
If I,
internal
you know,
temperatures.
I can't think of a better bourbon drinking temperature than 123
Oh, God.
degrees.
Oh,
Dude,
God.
they cashed an entire bottle of bourbon in a minivan between the two of them when it was 124
Well, they cash more than that. We'll get to that later.
in a place
too.
called Death Valley. Fam, I think you might have died.
Yeah.
I think the answer here is that somebody died.
Somebody's dead. To be real, though, we're talking about these people. The fact that the van was in this location means these people dove headfirst into a very unforgivable landscape. I mean, legitimately not even a fucking road here in unforgivably hot temperatures.
You know who drives minivans off of roads?
Walter White.
People who finish bottles of bourbon.
I guess there's that.
Yeah, dude, I'll have like 2 bourbons and be like, I don't know where I am.
I don't even own a minivan. Okay. The next day, which is now October 23rd, they start a full-on search for the 4 missing people. And they find out that the whole group had signed a visitor's log on July 23rd. And on it, they wrote their names and they wrote, quote, "We are going over the pass," which was determined to likely be Mengel Pass, which was located a few miles from Anvil Canyon at the end of the valley. And it was the only way in which to cross the Panamint mountain range. So they left a note at this visitor center in this log that they were going over this pass through the mountains. However, this route is, you either got to hike it or you've got to have some crazy 4-wheel off-roading vehicle. They had a Plymouth Voyager.
Yeah, but did it have like the wood grain panels on the side?
Because then
It wasn't the Town and Country, fam. It was the Voyager.
You're right.
Because then you're really prepared for nature. If it's wood paneled, you good.
Blended right in.
It's my goal in life to own a Jeep Wagoneer with the wood paneling. Grand Wagoneer. Sorry, Grand Wagoneer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I've heard a rumor that they're bringing them back at some point. I need that shit to happen so I can buy one.
Hey, you guys, patreon.com/whatifpodcast. If you want to support the Patreon, we're going to buy a wood paneled
I'm going to,
Grand Wagoneer.
I am not joining your all's Patreon.
No, listen.
This benefits all of us, Gorder.
Yeah.
Don't you fuck with me.
If you go throw $10 at our Patreon right now, not only will I mail you a mug that it turns out costs $9 to ship, so that shit's basically free.
Yeah, right.
My bad. I can't weigh things before I buy them. I will ship you a free mug, and it's going to get us $10 closer to buying a Jeep Grand Wagoneer, which is only like $4,000 these days because they stopped making them in the 80s.
Can we call it the What If Mobile?
Hold on. Yes.
Yes.
And our first trip is going to be a road trip to Colorado to investigate cattle mutilations, and you guys will get some firsthand cattle mutilation reports exclusive to Patreon. I'm making shit up, so I'm going to get back to the story. Give me your money, please.
It's all true. All of it.
That's the moral of the story. All right. They start searching for the group. They put out 40 plus people on the ground. They put out 2 helicopters and they put out 8 people on horseback. It was a 4-day search.
Damn, son.
4-day long search in the desert in the 124 degree heat. They had at one point over 100 people out there searching. And they spent $80,000, which today would be the equivalent of about $125,000. The only thing they turned up with the search was another Bud Ice bottle and, and a large butt print about 1.5 miles east of the van.
Hey, Bud Ice and butts, they go right on together.
It's real.
Dude,
It's real.
that sounds like a good night right there. You got some Bud Ice, you got a couple butts. It's fucking party. Someone had apparently sat down in the shade of a small bush to drink a Bud Ice.
Mm-hmm.
So they spent $125,000 to find an empty beer bottle and someone's ass print.
Right.
Jesus.
After 4 days and after having covered a pretty large area around the van, they called it off, having found really no additional information.
One thing that I think is sort of important to note is during the search with all this money, they were enlisting the Riverside Mountain Rescue Unit, which is the rescue, the human rescue unit of that area of basically Western Nevada and Eastern California. People who are experienced in searching in like desert areas, in specifically in the Death Valley National Park. I mean, this is a pretty, even though it's a very unforgiving landscape, it's a pretty popular national park for people to visit and hike and look into. And during the course of their search, before they called it off, they were doing and employing all of the knowledge of people who had been in that area, who had searched that area, who thought about sort of the potential and probable directions of these people. We actually talked about this in part 2 about the concept of people locking arms and combing fields.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily not that type of search, but it was also the type of search where you had helicopters and you had people that were like very experienced in looking for people in these types of areas.
Well, and they use that experience to identify specific locations where these people would have been likely to have gone.
Right.
And then in those locations, they did comb it basically arm
Yes,
to arm as
exactly.
thoroughly as they could.
Exactly. And I guess what I'm trying to say
Well, there's
about
no
that.
shrubbery really. There's no, there's no.
There's not
barren.
a lot, yeah.
No
Very
forest,
barren. Again, go to whatifpodcast.com and we'll have some pictures up that we'll go ahead and borrow from otherhand.org, or you can just go to otherhand.org and look at some of these pictures. But yeah, to your point, Gorder, like it's rocks, it's that like resting in shrubbery or like the shade of a bush is generous. I mean, you're not looking at trees, you're looking at like small bushes.
How far was the aspirant from the van
About
again?
a mile and a half.
Mile and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
We've kind of laid out the basics
Yep.
of those first few days, the
Yep.
initial search, what we know for sure.
Right.
Let's take a quick break.
Yep.
And then we'll come back with when Tom Mahood gets involved with the case and what he figured out.
Yeah, we'll tell you how he got involved and what he proceeded to discover when we come right back on the What If podcast. This episode of the What If podcast is brought to you in part by Button Poetry. Check them out right now by visiting buttonpoetry.com. Button Poetry is nothing like the traditional poetry you heard in high school, and they're certainly not the same old, boring dead guys that are going to put you to sleep. Button Poetry features poets of all ages, races, sexual orientations, and backgrounds. And as a poetry press and an online destination for spoken word and slam poetry videos, Button Poetry publishes poetry that moves people. They believe that real, current stories and real, current voices are more necessary now than ever. So check out everything they have to offer. There's books, there's videos, there's commentary, there's learning, there's education. There's so much stuff that you can get by checking them out at buttonpoetry.com today. You will fall in love with poetry all over again, or maybe for the very first time. Hey-o, we're back talking about German people in the desert.
Yep, they're not good at it. It's not natural, man. They don't have deserts. They don't know what to do out there. They're driving minivans into the sands.
Is that a fact? Do we know that Germans don't have
There's
deserts?
no desert in Germany.
I don't think so.
Well,
I
They
think
got
you're
forests and hills and stuff.
Right. They got mountains.
To be
Those
fair,
aren't deserts.
Fair.
That's why they have a different. That's why there's a different word.
The jungles of Germany.
To be fair, I will say that there are probably no humans alive who are super good at dealing with 124 degree temperatures. But
Not mostly lizards.
well, yeah, it's
Yeah.
mostly the snakes and the lizards.
Yep. All right. So where we left off, the German crew went missing. They abandoned their Plymouth Voyager.
Egbert and fam.
Yep. There was a search and rescue that turned up one. I wasn't going to say Egbert because I knew Gorder couldn't handle it.
Can't handle that name.
I said it because I wanted to see him lose it again.
They did a search over about 4 days. They spent a bunch of money. All they found was a Bud Ice bottle. I think that's where we left.
Yeah,
And a butt print.
it is.
And a butt print.
Multiple
Yep.
Bud
Bud and
Ice
a butt
bottles.
print. That's the
Yeah.
name of my new country album. So in 2008, we're fast forwarding 12 years. A fellow by the name of Tom Mahood comes across the case on a Death Valley hiking forum
Yep.
of all places.
Yep.
He was a hiking ass dude. He was interested in search and rescue efforts.
Lived in the southwest of the United States.
Yep. And in 2009, he starts actually working in search and rescue. And he starts asking around about this case of the missing Germans that he had come across the year prior. At one of these trainings, he meets a woman named Debbie Brietstein, who was on the original search team for the Germans and who also possessed a lot of the original documentation about the case. So she was able to supply him with a bunch of the information that wasn't necessarily publicly available and also connect him with some other people who had been working on the case in the 12 years since the official search had stopped. Tom concludes through a bunch of this information, and stop me if you want to get more specific on any of this stuff. I'm sort of, his write-up on his own website is extremely in-depth.
Yeah.
sort of for better or worse. If you want to get really down into the nitty gritty, you can. I'm going to try and hit just the most pertinent points. For sure.
And I'll leave you to the high points if there's anything that I feel like is essential, I will totally pop in. But yeah, I mean, if you guys really want to read it's got to be close to 30,000 words. It
took me at least an hour to read it.
Yeah, it took me a couple hours too. Yeah, it's a lot. Go ahead.
So Tom meets up with Debbie. He gets some of the documentation and the information that she had. She directs him to some other people who have been gathering information on the case, and he compiles all of this. And he concludes through all of this information that every area that the Germans likely would have gone once they got stranded had been thoroughly searched.
Yep.
And he starts combing through on the internet and in forums some explanations, and there's a bunch of speculation about what might have happened to this family. None of these seem especially plausible to me, but I'm just going to run through them because this is what he was trying to weed through at the time.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that like when there is so little evidence found and so little concrete knowledge, even though there is some firsthand documentation of it, the internet does what the internet be doing, which is just speculate itself into a tizzy around what could have possibly happened to these people in this situation.
So some of that speculation included that the Germans had possibly staged the incident in an effort to disappear and start new lives. This was given some momentum because Egbert's ex-wife, the one he asked for $1,500,
that never got sent,
said that the two of them had some custody issues with their son. Coworkers of Egbert's also stated that he had talked about moving to Costa Rica, which he thought would provide some sort of legal shelter if he were to kidnap his son and bring him with.
And to be clear, this is the son that is with them on the trip. So his new girlfriend and her son are there, and
Egbert's not coming out looking good on
Egbert and
side.
his son and his ex with his ex is also on the trip together. So to that
he
point,
had talked to his coworkers about possibly kidnapping and taking to Costa Rica.
Ooh. Oh, the kid. Oh, right. Not the ex.
Right.
Yeah.
But first of all, terrible idea. Don't do that. Secondly, if you're going to
don't kidnap your own kids,
don't tell people about it.
Yeah, if you're gonna kidnap your
before
kids
you go on an international trip with that kid.
Parody. Everything we say on the show is a joke. We're not recommending anything we're talking about.
I'm super not recommending kidnapping. I don't know about you.
No, we're saying if you're gonna do this, don't do this.
Right.
None of this is serious.
Yeah, no, don't kidnap anybody. That's considered a dick move.
Yes.
One of the other explanations was that Egbert was really fascinated with U.S. military technology and especially secret military installations and bases. You look like you have things to say.
Well, no, I just had a question about that. So I saw that theory raised as well. Was there any documentation about that theory that related? Was it just because there is so? You wouldn't have any reason to know this having just listening to the show, but there are military bases in Nevada and California, sort of.
They were within a few miles of one.
Of one, they were. And there's another one that was 14 miles away, or I can't remember what it was.
The one thing that Mahood brings up is that this was sort of the height of the Area 51 online speculation. It was before anything about Area 51 was declassified.
How close is that to Death Valley?
Not especially. And that's what he would, to that point, he was saying if Egbert was interested in that sort of thing, Area 51 would have been the obvious destination.
Right.
It was all over the internet. There was a ton of hype around it. It hadn't been classified yet, so it was still very speculative and secretive. He's saying this in reference to there was a China Lake facility.
Yeah.
What was it, 8 miles from where they were?
I think that's about right, yeah.
And one of the possible explanations, or one of the speculative explanations, was that Egbert went out there with the intention of getting close to this facility to try and see something, for the same reason that people try and get close to Area 51.
I mean, I could see that with Egbert not being a bright man and somewhat of a dick.
Yeah.
And just chugging bourbon and Bud Ice is...
In hunting for a military facility.
I'm not... It's not my place to make a judgment right now.
I agree with you, though. It doesn't seem like a very good explanation for what happened.
And also, we don't really, outside of the fact that there were those things in the vicinity of where they disappeared, there isn't any evidence that's leading us to that conclusion. There's no personal journal. There's no anecdotal evidence from friends that was something that he was necessarily interested in.
I think Mahood is just addressing some of the rumors and speculation that was going around at the time that he first got introduced to this case.
Okay.
The last theory that he covers is that the Germans came across some sort of criminal situation, that they got robbed or mugged, or that they came across one of those drug manufacturing facilities that apparently were in the area.
Walt and Jesse were out there in the RV.
And they got disappeared.
People are not supposed to find those people.
They were also within a few miles of Barker Ranch, which, if you're not familiar, is where the Manson family spent a lot of time.
Ooh.
Oh boy, I missed that part of things.
Oh, really?
Oh boy.
Shit. Yeah, they were within, I think, 10 or fewer miles of basically what became the Manson family ranch, where they were originally arrested at this ranch.
Liven.
Yeah. So he puts out the possible, or the hypothesis that they came across somebody doing something illegal and secretive in the desert and they got offed.
Or they found people who didn't want to be found, kind of thing, too.
Right. Again, there's no real evidence to support that, but it seems possible.
It's the clues, I think, in these situations are more like exterior sort of, these are the things that were around them that could have been contributing forces based on just pure proximity alone.
Mahood dismisses the criminal hypothesis pretty quickly, though, because they left all of their money and their bank cards and stuff in the van.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Did they bring anything with them?
No, and they would have had to already have been stuck, so that it wouldn't explain why they were out there in the first place. And then they got stranded because their van got stuck because they were trying to off-road their Plymouth Voyager.
Jesus.
If they then got...
Turns out that's a bad idea.
Mugged.
A guy named Egbert going to be that stupid? His name is Egbert. He should be a scientist who works with Beaker. Go ahead.
No, I mean, his wallet was still there. Her wallet was never discovered, but there was no activity on any of her bank accounts or any of her lines of credit or anything. So you would think if you're going to rob somebody or if you're going to off somebody, you would maybe also take their belongings.
Didn't they empty these things out too?
Which things?
Their credit cards, their bank accounts had to have been emptied by then. If they're going to be asking for money from Germany.
I think his were.
That's a good point.
But I don't necessarily think hers were. Because they had said
I don't know.
There had been no attempted transactions, I guess, would have been the other thing. So they would have had some documentation of an
ATM
attempted
record.
work.
I mean, that would show up. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure.
It's a good point. But I think to Spencer's point, the fact that the cards were found in the van, signifies that no one even tried.
If you were robbing them, you wouldn't know that their accounts were empty.
Sorry,
You'd still take their wallet.
I'm on this idea of them running somewhere trying to disappear still.
Yeah.
So, why wouldn't they take some of that shit? I mean, even just some cash or whatever. A camera, why not?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Right. So none of those explanations really worked for Mahood.
Yep.
And he started to look pretty seriously at the area south of where the van had been found, primarily because it seemed to him to be the only area that hadn't been hand searched during the original investigation.
$80,000 multi-hundred person.
Yeah,
search.
and based on topographical maps that he could find, it seemed like it would be at least possible to cross on foot.
Yep.
He didn't have any reason for them to be going in that direction, but the fact that it seemed technically possible for them to have gone that way on foot, and the fact that it wasn't an area that was searched in the original investigation.
It seems strange in a search they wouldn't do a circle around in there, especially in a desert.
Well, I think the issue was they had so much area to cover.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
that
go
makes
look, if you
sense.
go look on Google Maps, like it's a huge amount of area where there's really nothing. So what they did was they narrowed it down to, okay, we know where they were headed.
Yeah.
We're
Or
gonna
they're
look-
headed towards the past. I get what you're
So
saying.
we know the direction they were trying to go. We're going to look in that area first.
Yep.
Then we're going to try and identify if you were stuck here, where would be the closest places to try and go get help, and we're going to hand search those areas.
Yeah, word. Okay, that makes sense.
They did search this area south of where they found the van, but only by helicopter, not actually with people down on the ground.
Extensively. Yeah. Okay.
They only went like to a certain point and basically I think kind of came to the conclusion that like, well, there'd be no reason for them to go south. There's nothing down here. They wouldn't have, seen on a map like, oh, we got to go in this direction. So they kept it moving in the other direction.
And from their original search from the air, they didn't see anything that warranted further investigation.
Okay.
But Mahood comes to the conclusion that, well, that kind of has to be it because they searched everything else. And I don't know why they would have gone that way, but it seems possible that they could have.
Yeah.
And they're not showing up anywhere else. So maybe.
Tom Mahood is not an official character of any kind. He doesn't.
He's doing this because he wants to.
He basically, he is trained as a rescue worker because he got trained as a rescue worker intentionally, but he is not being tasked with figuring this out.
Yeah,
he
Just
basically
took a personal interest.
He exactly. He took a very personal interest in this case and was like,
His tweets are his own.
Yeah, his tweets are his own. He seems to have felt like something about this doesn't add up, and I think I can
Maybe the part where they didn't find anybody.
Well, right, yes.
Yeah, like bones or some shit would make some sense.
And to that end, he took this on as I'm going to look more into this. So everything that we're about to talk about in terms of his sort of sussing out of how things happened is of dude's own accord with his own money and his own time and all that stuff.
So his first step after coming to this conclusion that somebody should probably search the area south of the van.
Yep.
His first step is to go out there by himself. So he takes his truck out there solo, drives into the valley.
Did the whole drive your van into a ditch thing.
Yeah, I was like,
Right.
don't do that.
Right.
Come on, Mahood.
The last people who did this disappeared, bro. You might not want to do that.
Did you learn nothing?
Don't worry, guys. He brought a case of Bud Ice. He's good to go.
He didn't bring a sixer. He brought the whole case.
So he makes his first trip out there by himself, and he's able to locate the site where the van was and the site, the Aspirant Bud Ice location. He takes some photos. He brings a GPS device with him and records the GPS coordinates of these locations. And he just kind of looks around for anything that may have been missed in the initial investigation and being actually on site on the ground. He's looking for any reason that they may have headed south. So standing in that location, is there anything on the horizon to the south that looks like an establishment of some kind, or is there a trail or just anything? So his first trip out there was just he did a day hike, surveyed the area, took photos, took GPS coordinates, and then headed back. Based on that, and based on all the research he's able to do online and from all the information that other investigators had gathered, he forms this hypothesis about what likely happened to the Germans. And he lays it out as such. He said their rental van was due back in LA on July 26th, and their flight was the next day on the 27th. They probably did not have much or any money, as they had made 2 attempts, one successful, one not successful, to have more money wired to them. They obviously were not familiar with the desert or the road conditions, because not only were they from another country that does not have deserts, as far as I'm aware, Gorder.
You're just not looking close enough.
But they also, they just weren't equipped for it at all. They thought that they would be fine in a minivan. They obviously were incorrect about that, and they got stuck. So that we know that they weren't familiar with and equipped for that route. He comes to the conclusion that they likely decided to go through this canyon en route to Yosemite National Park, which is, I'm not sure exactly how far, but basically due north of this area, within a day's drive, is Yosemite.
Yeah, multiple hours drive away from here. But
Yeah,
yes, but due north in California for sure.
Yeah, and doable within a day.
Yep.
And would have likely been a destination for international tourists if you're in that area.
Definitely.
So they decide to go to Yosemite via Death Valley because maybe they wanted to sightsee, maybe it seemed like the most direct route, whatever.
Yep.
They obviously didn't know what they were getting into, and that obviously created a significant problem for them, but kind of makes sense if you're not familiar with the area. They are broke. As far as we know, they have literally no money.
Yep.
And
Not that it would do them any good out there.
well, he says this to say that they may have chosen a different route if they were to camp at a campsite, a paid campsite,
hotel,
or if they were to stay at a cabin or a hotel or something. He thinks that they probably took this route because it would be remote enough that they could camp just wherever for free without being hassled. Yeah. So they get out there, they get about 2.5 miles in, and the conditions are way worse than they anticipated. There's not really a road, there's not a clear path. They are in this wash of this canyon, and they get 3 flat tires, and they get stuck. So they're really in some shit.
Sometimes it's not your night, man.
Thanks, Hannibal.
So they make a couple bad decisions, but kind of understandable decisions in maybe the same way that some of the missing 411 people made one, like, not horrible decision, but one that led to a bunch of other not horrible decisions.
Right.
That when you add them all up leads to one horrible decision.
Right.
So they get stuck, and they're, several miles from any sort of civilization, any sort of water, anything. It's 124 degrees. They have a map with them because they found one in the van. About 8 miles to the south of them was the China Lake Naval Weapons Center that we referenced earlier as the military installation that potentially Egbert may have been interested in.
Yup.
So if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, you know that there's a military installation, a walkable but far distance south of you.
Right.
That seems like a place where you could probably get some help. If they're going to be guards, there's going to be some sort of patrol. You could walk up and say, hey, I'm fucked. We're stranded. My family needs help. They're going to have supplies. They're going to have vehicles. They're going to have whatever you need to get some help. So Mahood puts together the hypothesis that Egbert wandered about a mile and a half out from the vehicle to a point where he would have been able to see this installation, which would be the Bud Ice and Butt Print site. He sees the location. He goes back to the van. They camp overnight, which would explain some of the food wrappers and the couple of shitholes that they found.
Yep.
And then in the morning, the whole family ventures out in an attempt to reach this military installation.
Right.
Which across a fairly flat desert may have looked closer than it actually was.
Sure.
You would have been able to see it across the
It's
horizon.
120 some degrees,
Not realizing that an 8-mile hike through a 120 degree desert is not going to really probably work out for you.
Or a 4-year-old.
Yeah, that too.
And
you got little kids with you for sure.
I mean, an 11-year-old, okay,
Maybe,
they can maybe keep up, but you have a 4-year-old with you.
That shit's, no.
A 4-year-old can't do much,
Right.
much less hike 8 miles across a 120 degree desert.
Well, and you think about too, if the probability is that the 4-year-old is not doing any hiking, then that means that one of the adults is then
Staying
carrying,
back, yeah.
or either,
Yeah,
staying with or carrying the
Yeah, that's a good
4-year-old,
point.
which
Carrying
is
an extra 50 pounds or something.
adding an added burden to the whole thing.
Mahood decides based on this information that it's enough to search the area south of the van.
Yeah.
That he now has at least some plausible explanation for why they may have been in this area, and it's the one area that wasn't covered at least thoroughly in the initial search.
Right.
So he identifies an area south of there and starts planning his search.
Yep.
There are 3 sort of small valleys along the route that they would have had to take. So the area where the van is sort of in this. And again, if you want to go search or go look at the otherhand.org, or we'll share as much of it as we can on our website.
For sure.
But these are all photos that Mahood took himself and owns.
We'll just link out to them if we don't embed them. You'll see them.
So there's this area, it's this wash of this valley where the van was located. There's sort of these 3 valleys that run south of there on a line towards the military installation.
Yep.
And it's not obvious from maps, at least, which of the 3 would be the easiest path. So Mahood goes out there with the intention of, his first step is to identify which of these 3 valleys they would have most likely traveled through and then search that area.
Can I just say what a badass this dude is to be like,
Yeah.
4 fucking German people died here like 15 years ago, and this dude is in the middle of Death Valley National Park in like very aggressive conditions, being like, all right, guys, we got 3 valleys. Which one are we searching first? Like, he's so pot committed to this whole fucking concept of like hunting down what could have possibly happened to these people. And he's literally gaining nothing personally from this entire situation.
And by the end of it, and on his website, he discourages people from going out there because he's like, hey, I've been out here.
Real. Yeah.
I've been out here many times.
Well, he was trained,
And
that too.
I've been out here. I'm trained. I know what I'm doing. I had help. I don't plan to ever go back out there because a couple times I thought I was going to die.
That was a little
Really said that?
Yeah, he was like, I don't recommend, like, I'm in shape, I hike, I'm trained, I know what I'm doing, I had help. And it was still, looking back on it, it was a bad idea. I probably shouldn't have done it.
During one story, he outlines a specific situation where he was so, he went like, I'm going to mess up the terminology, but it's like hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic.
It's hypo or hyper. I don't know.
I can't remember which one it was, but basically he had been hiking in 100-degree temperatures for days at a time.
With a thyroid condition he wasn't aware of?
With a thyroid condition he wasn't aware of, and basically like thought he was going to die in the desert kind of thing. So yeah, I think some of these also hikes informed his like, don't fucking do this kind of shit.
Well, and he was doing 15, 16, 17 miles a day, sometimes hikes. Jeez. And in an area where, so he would bring in water, but you can only bring obviously as much as you can carry. So he's bringing a 40-pound pack full of water, but then at some point you have to find water.
Right.
So he had marked.
Is that even possible there?
He had marked on his map or with GPS coordinates where there were natural springs.
Yeah.
So you'd have to hike to that, fill up water. He buried water on several points along. So he would bring bottles to fill and then bury so he could come back to them.
Dedicated as fuck.
Right.
I mean, I think that to me almost in some ways was one of the most impressive elements of this entire story is the level of dedication that this one person put into going, I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and I'm
just
going
because I want to.
Yeah, just because like I feel like the people who have disappeared have been wronged by whatever resources did not properly find them. He mentions multiple times in the way that he writes through this about the families who got no closure about their missing relatives and how that was a motivating factor for him to be like, if I have both the ability and the desire to potentially bring clarity to that situation, I'm going to keep doing it. And that was like a fuel that kept him burying fucking water in the desert to go back to rehydrate.
Badass, man.
Yeah,
Jesus.
total fucking badasses.
The real hero of this whole thing, though, is his buddy Les, who he recruited to come with him.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know anything about this other than Tom is like, hey, Les, what are you doing Friday?
Oh, man, I was going to stay home, man. Just like, read a book. Oh,
are you sure? Hey, man, are you sure you want to stay home? Or instead...
So
how do you feel about 120-degree temperatures?
You were my wingman last
20-mile hikes. Yeah, right?
Tom plans out this first hike, and he recruits Les to come with him. Les, for whatever reason, agrees to do it. And they head out there with the intention of identifying which of these 3 valleys would have been the most likely path for the Germans if they were indeed heading south towards this military installation. They reach the 3 valleys, and they decide to split up and search the valleys.
No, thank you.
They have They have walkie-talkies with them, and they're keeping in touch with each other from opposite sides of this valley.
Hey, bro, you dead yet? No, I'm cool. You dead yet? No, I'm cool.
Mostly.
All right, cool. Let's keep it moving.
They talk about how a rattlesnake followed them for a long time. Like that alone.
Nope.
I hear shaking and I'm going home. Like that's desert maracas.
Again, we're getting back into the city boy thing here.
You know, yeah,
where it's like, that sounds weird. Let's go back home. I want to go to an essay.
You know what I also think
there
about
are no
in that
maracas
moment?
out in the desert.
Yeah. You know what I think also about in that moment? Turns out those German people are definitely dead one way or another. And me being here is not changing them from being dead. And I might become dead if I stay out here. So I'd rather not join those German people in their becoming of dead.
Rattlesnake just like behind you, like, what's
And
up,
I'm going to go
pal?
home.
Just shaking my ass at
Let
you.
me get that number.
Y'all looking for some bones?
So pretty soon after they split up, Les walkie-talkies Tom to say, I found a wine bottle and I found some pages from a day planner and the writing is in German.
This is 15 years later?
Yo,
This is-
15 years later.
12. This was from 96 to 08.
Yo, 12 years
Oh, wait.
later.
Oh, wait, or...
Oh, you're sorry, 09. 13 years.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay.
A number of years later.
Plenty.
How did that shit not blow away?
A wine bottle?
No, a piece of paper.
Well, it was...
Oh.
It
Wine
was,
bottle like it.
it was in a planner. Like
like a book.
like a-
okay.
yeah.
So
Okay.
you've got like a back before.
No, I remember. I have a planner now. I'm old as fuck.
So he finds this planner and a wine bottle, calls Tom over to check it out. They join up. They start searching the area together. They also find a wallet that has Cornelia's ID in it. They find another Bud Ice bottle.
Jesus.
They find a toothbrush and toothpaste, part of a shoe, and they find some human bones.
Ay, ay, ay.
The bones, however, appeared to all be from the same person, which explains some things, but also raises a bunch more questions.
Which person do they know?
It appeared to be an adult.
Oh, phew. I'm
So-
just scared. I'm these kids, man. That's all I keep
Yeah.
thinking about. You got two dumb German motherfuckers. Just
Well,
dumb.
for sure one.
One, Eggy.
Yeah.
We don't know it. Yeah, but
Cornelius or whatever
was
the
he
fuck
the
her name
only
is
one
might have been around.
chugging Bud Ice bourbon
Yes.
and wine?
Yes.
Jesus.
Just trying to forget the fact that his name is Eggy. That's really,
And
really
forget-
the whole point of this trip.
and forget the fact that it's 125
Yeah.
degrees.
Oh, come on.
So Tom and Les have this little discussion about, okay, this is clearly important. This is clearly linked to this case.
Yeah.
What do we do with it? Do we leave it here and try and flag it somehow or mark it so that hopefully the Rangers or whoever can come back and find it later? Do we take it with us?
Yeah, it's bones especially.
If there was a crime, are we now disturbing a crime scene? What's the best course of action? They decide to leave everything except for the ID where it was, mark it so that they can find it again later, and bring the ID back to the park ranger's office so that they have some credibility in terms of like, no, we really did find something. It really is linked to this case.
Which is smart and kind of makes sense that you would like, if you bring back a shoe, they're going to be like, okay, you have a shoe, but you literally have an ID that has the disappeared person's picture and name on it. Like, it to me, it's the most sensible piece of evidence you could bring back is the thing that designates that there was the person who disappeared
and
there.
immediately.
Yeah. Right.
And probably isn't going to disrupt a crime scene that's been a crime scene for 13 years if it is one.
Yeah. Right.
You're not doing anything that the weather and the elements didn't already do.
Right.
So they bring this stuff back to the park ranger station. At this point, the county sheriff's department and the FBI get involved. And they bring out, I'm skipping a bunch of stuff here. I don't know if...
I think it's probably about time to, I mean, well, go ahead and I'll kind of fill in what you were just about to say.
The sheriff's department and the FBI get involved and they recruit people to basically start this search up again. They get a couple helicopter teams out there and they go out to the site that Tom and Les had marked where they found these things. They collect what they had found out there, the bones and the shoe and the bottles and stuff. But their search doesn't turn up anything more than what Tom and Les had already found. they also were not, from the bones, initially able to ID it or pull any DNA from it because it had been out
So long,
in the elements
bleached,
for 13
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Tom is then he's done with the case in any official sense. He's done his part. He passed it on to the sheriffs, to the FBI. But he's not really satisfied with how it turned out, and he thinks that there's probably still more information out there. He's only found, at least one of them died out there, but he doesn't know who, he doesn't know how, he doesn't know what happened to the other 3 people. And he decides to make another trip out there.
Beast mode.
Yeah, dude is unstoppable.
Tom doesn't
How old is this
give
dude?
a fuck.
That's a great question.
We don't know. There are pictures, again, if you go to otherhand.org, there are
Is
pictures.
he in any of them?
Yeah.
Oh.
Les and Tom have taken pictures of each other throughout the process of some of
Oh
this.
man, they're just good buds.
They
Dude, we all
literally-
deserve a lesson in our life.
Yo,
you know
for
what I'm
real.
saying?
They literally.
No one deserves an Eggie.
No one deserves an Eggie.
Eggie included.
Hey, let's drink 64 ounces of peanut butter and let's just fucking go that way. Honey, I love you. Let's do this. Bring the kids.
This
Come
way to
on.
Costa Rica.
Hey, I'm pretty sure Area 51's around here. We're gonna find it. Yeah, no one deserves that in their life at all.
So he decides to make another trip out there.
Just to your point, Gorder, I think he's probably like in his, at the time this was written, which was in the last 5 years, I think he was kind of in his, like, maybe.
Not how math works, but that's okay.
Well, the last post on his covering of this whole topic was in 2012.
Okay.
That is how math works. Nice
So
work.
that is kind of how math works.
Burnt, bitch.
The last 5 to 8.
Sometimes it's not your night, man.
The last 5 to 8 years, if you want to go from beginning to end. He appears to be in the photos to be kind of in his like maybe early 50s.
Okay.
Like late 40s, early 50s, maybe
you can make a
mid-50s.
movie about Mahood. Like,
Right?
Yeah.
That's-
the
the
relentless
story is
badass.
compelling, and I feel like you haven't told me everything that I want to know yet. But
If he teamed up with Politis,
Yo,
we find Bigfoot tomorrow, bro.
tomorrow. Yesterday.
and
we
Robot
found Bigfoot
Grandma.
yesterday.
And like 3,000 missing people.
dude, just send Les and Mahood up to the northwestern forest.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Tom decides to go out there. I think he went solo again, right?
Yeah. For
Dumb motherfucker.
yeah.
I
For what it's
good
worth.
on him, but Jesus, bro, you're lucky you didn't die.
Yeah, part of what when Spencer was looking at me going, I think I surpassed a few things. There's a bunch of trips that happen here. There are a bunch of hikes, a bunch of some of them are solo with just Tom going, you know what, I'm gonna go just like check out this area for a little bit. And some of them's like, hey Les, you busy this afternoon? Oh, you don't want to watch a football game? Cool, come with me. We're gonna go look for dead people. Like it was a lot of kind of small trips,
Like day
hunting
hikes
small
and stuff.
areas, day
Yeah.
hikes, etc.
Yeah.
I think on one of his solo trips, though,
It was, yep.
he finds some German health insurance cards, a set of keys, and a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah, so just to clarify too, Tom is continuing to move southbound
While
from
the
where
FBI is still investigating.
I think the reason he was annoyed and decided to start looking at this stuff again on his own is because they had found the one set of bones and been like, good enough. They died out there in the desert somewhere.
they did sort of from the impression that he got based on his connections he had made with that group of people, sort of felt like they decided if we found one of them dead having hiked this far,
Yeah.
like we're not going to go look for individual bones, but we can pretty safely say that the family hiked this far and died somewhere in the wilderness.
Which,
And
like,
he didn't feel fully satisfied by
Yeah.
that explanation yet, I guess.
13 years later, after having dropped 6 figures plus into this investigation, like,
Hundreds of people.
I don't totally
Yeah.
blame them.
Yeah, I get that too.
Hey kids, you don't have art class, but guess what? We found some bones of some Germans from 13 years ago.
I mean,
Right,
at
right.
some point, like, you do have a budget and you do
Yeah.
have an obligation to not put your employees in dangerous situations
Yeah,
too.
Right.
that's a very good point.
I don't know.
And that's when people, mavericks like Mahood comes up
Right?
Yeah.
and just takes care of business.
Said, not today, Satan. we go find.
Get behind me.
We go find you, Germans.
So he finds some health insurance cards, a set of keys, a pair of sunglasses, which I believe he turned over to the sheriff's department or marked in order for them to find.
Yes.
And he also gets word from I think it was the sheriff's department again, that they had been able to pull some DNA from deep inside one of the bones that they located, and that it did indeed match that of Egbert.
Oof, Eggy went down first. There's no surprise.
Well,
we don't know the order, but
Yeah.
that's who they found near the pile of Bud Ice bottles.
yeah, right.
Man,
But actually, it sucks to laugh at a dude dying in the desert by himself.
but he could at least have a better drink to go out on.
Well,
get some Zima or something.
yeah, just a clear Pepsi. We're good to go.
I think the reality is the first set of bones and identification cards was adult bones, and when they were able to genetically identify the fact that the second set of bones was male, they inferred that the girlfriend was the first set of bones they found, and that Egbert was the second set of bones.
Okay.
And then at that point, they had found 2 of the 4 missing people in the desert.
And this was now 2010.
Yep.
And that is when they officially called it, saying, we found the 2 adults likely.
Yeah.
There's no way that the kids made it any
Yeah.
further than this.
4-year-olds,
They
no
wouldn't
way.
have been separated from the adults, most
Yeah.
likely. We can probably say that this is where it ended.
And I know we've kind of joked about it, and I don't mean to be like to bring it into an even darker place, but actually some of the theories and suppositions around the finding of the bottles is potentially that the girlfriend was left with whatever liquids they had. So the bottles that were found near her were like, she couldn't carry on, so here's some liquid and we're going to keep going to try to see what we can find, kind of thing.
I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make fun of people who
No,
die.
no, and
Yeah,
obviously,
Bud Ice
I
is
mean,
just
it's
funny to me.
Yeah,
but
for sure. No, I'm definitely not, putting anybody on blast. I mean, we've been joking about it this whole time, but that is sort of the end game theory that people are kind of
That's
saying.
fucking sad, man.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah.
But it's
this story doesn't.
No,
Unfortunately, have a good
there's no
ending.
happy ending, which is why I was trying to make it as light as possible on the way through
Yeah,
it. But
for sure. I guess
it's-
disappearing people never really have a super happy ending, but
it's an interesting story to me in that if you just look at it from the initial reports and the initial investigation, it looks really weird.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to be there. There's no trace of any of them. They did a very thorough search. Like, this is a missing 411 case.
in a lot of ways, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In that, I mean, having read several of these books, I could imagine seeing this case file of like, they were this family from blah, 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 and they were on this sightseeing trip and they mysteriously abandoned their vehicle and there were no traces of them and they weren't able to be tracked and they did this 4-day search. And it's like, it's the same thing that's described over and over and over again in the missing 411 books.
Right.
And what it took was somebody saying like, no, fuck that. Something happened and I'm going to figure it out. And he did.
Yeah.
And it took like this dude honestly risking his life several times and probably some other people's along the way and spending a bunch of time and a bunch of his own money on just saying like, no, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
There is an explanation and fuck, I'm going to find it.
Right.
And he actually did.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And it's not that weird. There's nothing paranormal. There's nothing strange about it. It's sad, but it makes total sense.
Right.
Like they got stranded. They didn't really know where they were. They were kind of desperate. They took a chance in what they thought was probably their best option.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
And this area is so big and so harsh and so remote that like, yeah, no one had probably walked that area in 13 years because there's no reason to.
Yeah. They definitely weren't robbed, and that theory goes right out the window. To me, it seems like, and I'm putting everything on Egbert, which isn't necessarily fair because I don't know about the lady.
It's also probably right.
I mean,
I mean, dudes, we're just not the best.
it's real.
But it's a man at the end of his rope. Like this is somebody who is falling apart,
Right.
and is just continuing to fall apart, and leading others to their death, unfortunately, including kids.
But it also, I think it also gives some credence to the idea of like, it's not one big mistake or one big monumentous event that causes things like this. He looked at a map. It seemed like the shortest route. His girlfriend agreed, like, yeah, that seems to make sense. They did it. It worked for a while.
Yeah.
Until it didn't.
How far do they get exactly?
I mean, they were 2.5 miles from the nearest road, but they were like decently far into the park.
Yeah.
They had been on the road for a better part of a day, I think.
Yeah.
And
Hours.
They got stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, like, they didn't know the area.
They didn't have the right
They
water.
weren't really prepared.
Food. Yeah.
Yep.
They took a risk and it didn't pay off.
Yeah.
Like, there was no one moment where they just obviously made a totally wrong decision. It was just a bunch of little stuff that ended up with them in a really rough spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the first and most major element of it is, you know, even though a van with 3 flat tires doesn't help you much, I feel like leaving the vehicle is like one of the worst things you can do. I mean, at least you have some shade. At least you have
Well, someone would have seen it.
gasoline. You could be seen near the van.
Well, that's what every survivalist says, is to stay the fuck put
right.
in any situation.
Especially when you don't know where you are.
Yeah, don't pull some Survivor Man shit. Not Survivor
Forge
Man.
ahead.
He's boss. Who's the other one that was off? Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
Don't like jump into a river and try to swim to a town. Like just stay.
Right. And that was, I think, like the first domino in the whole, like, ooh, this is gonna go poor.
Well, and the stakes instantly go through the roof on all of those decisions that follow.
Right. Because everything has hella gravity when it kind of carries forth.
One mistake could be the death of 4 people at that point. Which it was.
Which unfortunately,
So they never got the bones of the kids, though, huh?
They did find some bones that, again, like to your point earlier about unable to like DNA identify what they were. There was a later follow-up where they found what appeared to be a child's clavicle that was similar in location to where Egbert's remains were found, but sort of further away.
I know I was holding on to some weird thing that you always hold on to, even like in those like disaster movies. You're like, maybe he'll like pop up out of the water.
Yeah.
Like just maybe one of them, maybe.
Yes,
like
sorry that this whole story was just a
This
toilet
is sort of
bowl,
a bummer.
toilet bowl churn into a flush is all this is.
I really enjoyed the butt ice bits.
Definitely. If you're gonna disappear, God knows we're gonna be drunk on our way out. Right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Everybody in this room, if we can prefer it.
Do you think there's a level of alcohol where if it's so weak, it actually does help hydrate you?
See, I've wondered that.
If you're at like 2.8, is it actually worth drinking? You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's
there's
the thing
gotta
is-
be. There's
what's the
gotta,
cutoff,
I
do
mean,
you
there's
think?
water in beer. Not to
Yeah.
be like whatever, but like that is a big part of
it's
what
something.
beer
It's
is.
got to
Right, but
feel good to taste
there's-
it when you're
there's-
thirsty.
There's water in whiskey too, and that's not going to help you. There's
Well,
got to be like a threshold.
3.2. You think it's got to be lower than 3.2?
I don't know.
I would-
where it's actually like doing more good than harm in a hydration sense.
I just had a Miller High Life. I feel refreshed. Honestly, like I feel no alcohol at all in my system. I just feel refreshed.
I would imagine it's a time thing, right? Like if you drink beer over a certain amount of time and then you get to safety, you'll be hydrated enough, but it will dehydrate you after, kind of thing.
I don't know science.
I don't think so.
Or
I don't
biology.
either. I don't either.
No, that's
Yeah, I
also
apologize for asking any sort of science-related question.
Did you guys know the further north you go, there are more shooting stars?
Yo,
and
I've
you
heard
also
that.
grow 1 foot with every passing
You
year.
realize
I've
that's
heard
a
that,
week-old
Greg.
callback at this point?
You might want to cut that out.
We're totally leaving it in. All right, you guys. So that was part 3 of What If You Disappeared? The Death Valley Germans is unfortunately kind of a sad story, but a fascinating story, I think, when you look at the context of a story like that as it relates to some of the David Paulides stuff. If those David Paulides missing 411 cases potentially had a Tom and a Les on the case, maybe there wouldn't be so many of those cases, because I think it is pretty obvious that institutions that put a lot of people and man hours and effort and time and safety at risk, they call those things, we don't fucking know what happened, but that person's obviously dead at this point, so we're done now. And 13 years later, that man went on all of these trips that he took were over the course of 6, 7, 8, 9 months almost.
It was a
or
year
years,
plus,
I guess. Yeah, it was definitely years.
He found
at
the story
point.
in 2008, and
That's
it
right.
wasn't settled until
Shout
2010.
out to Tom and Les, guys. Good job.
So that was like a level of commitment that was required to figure out what happened in this disappearance. And it is, I don't know. It's an interesting juxtaposition to the ones where it's like,
yeah, it is. It's a really good.
these people are gone and they're gone.
Yeah.
You know, those people seemed like they were gone and they were gone, but.
They were for 13 years.
Right. But maybe, and hopefully those families got some closure off of knowing that their families weren't subject to a criminal act, that they didn't go try to disappear and start a new life in fucking Costa Rica or whatever.
They do, however, have to live with the shame of their choice of beverages.
Yep, that's true. The Bud Ice, that's
Didn't look good.
That's the family drink of choice at that point.
Whoa, baby boy.
All right, you guys. Gorder, thanks one more time for joining us.
Hey, thank
on the
you
What
guys.
If
You guys are the
Podcast.
best. Appreciate
yeah,
y'all.
dude, thank you. Send us an email, hi@whatifpodcast.com. Visit us online at the whatifpodcast.com.
Everyone was pretty ugly, but it was still a pretty good time.
We did have a pretty good time. We love you.
I am pretty as fuck.
As always, we'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.
Hey guys, really quickly, we still need a few more people to fill out our survey at whatifpodcast.com/survey, or you can just scroll down a little bit and click on it in the show notes. It's super quick. It'll take you less than 30 seconds. I think it's only 6 questions, and it really helps us to be able to keep making this show. It's totally anonymous. We won't get any information tied to your email address, nothing. So please click on it down below or go to whatifpodcast.com/survey and fill it out. Thanks.